Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. Welcome back, Otterites, episode 165.
I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis, somehow sitting in the captain's chair on this episode.
Well, there's an obvious reason.
Well, okay, pop culture, guys. We've been doing philosophy and heavy stuff for a little while. Let's take a break and go something fun. What is more fun than a great TV series? My opinion. And don't answer that question. And
I was just going to say, does he mean the last two episodes weren't fun? But
that's okay. But
yes, there are some activities.
How about lighthearted?
Thank you. That's right. Lighthearted.
That adults would find perhaps more enjoyable than talking about a TV show. But this is also fun.
We're going to talk about a great comedic TV show. One of my favorites, one of your all's favorites, and I suspect one of our listeners' favorites. Hello, Seattle. We're listening. Yes, that's Dr. Frasier Crane to you and to everybody else. Kelsey Grammer's magnificent character. It's mostly about the character, but it's mostly about the show. Frasier ran 11 seasons on NBC in the 90s. In many respects, it kind of defined a lot of the 90s. People were watching it.
It was as big as Friends.
Very much so. Those two
Seinfeld.
those three series, in many respects, encapsulates what the 90s were. In many respects,
for television, yeah,
television.
For
that's right.
television comedies, they were it.
The character actually goes way back to the mid 80s because he was created as a foil, as a love interest, meant to be only a one-time deal for that. I think it was the second season of Cheers, where Diana's supposed to marry him, and it ends up. A lot of it was Kelsey Grammer's own unique, lovable. He was just a great actor, still is, and a fantastic presence that he brought. The creators and the showrunners at Cheers saying maybe this guy's got more than just a one-off. Doesn't happen very often. Most guest stars just kind of evaporate into the ether.
There was such an energy to his performance.
That's correct.
That
he was
like,
in enough
we could
episodes because he was like 5 or 6 episodes in his first appearance when he's left at the altar by Diane, and that should have been it.
But he keeps coming into Cheers.
He keeps coming into Cheers, and because they realize we like Kelsey, we like him. He's a great actor, and he's become a force of his own in many respects. He's a great producer.
Well, he's a great foil against the goofy silliness, I don't want to say the dumbness necessarily, but he represents the intellectual side that Norm does not, and that Cliff aspires to.
It's interesting you say that. When we go back to the genesis of this character,
and Woody, Harrelson's character as well.
Yes.
Well, by the time he came on, because I want to say the coach was still behind the bar.
Nicholas Colasanto was still coach.
He was still there at the time because Frasier was. I'm pretty sure second season, might be third, but
no, second.
I'm pretty sure it was second. And next thing you know, you've got Bebe Neuwirth as Lilith that is brought in, and the two of them, in many respects, bring lightning in a bottle, to use that phrase, to that series. Not to say that the series needed them; it was very much capable on its own merits.
Kirstie Alley did a super nice job coming in a tough spot to replace. Diane Chambers' character,
that's right, and it was because that could have been Shelley Long could have been the end because she and Ted Danson, of course, were the leads, but kind of like MASH, which we talked about last month. You can, if you long as your anchor main character stays, you can bring those in his satellite in that are new and still in fact it enlivens and refreshes something that could have gotten stale over time. I'm not to say that MASH or Cheers would have done that. I think they had the legs of the premise and the talent.
But it's possible that Shelley Long's character, there's only so much you could do with that character, that Diane Chambers, the way she was written.
Well, because she's either the love interest or the love interest that you don't get. But you only have so much mileage.
Yeah, the problem was they consummated the relationship far too early in the series, because then, there's a whole will they won't-ly in the first season. Then they do, and then very quickly it's over.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons Frasier was brought in, is because now it's got to be, they did it, but it's not all done, and there's still that, they're not going to be.
You've got to have some way. because of that character is not as sympathetic as the Sam character.
Right.
You know, Sam, the ex-baseball player who's kind of resurrected his life after being an alcoholic, but still works at a bar. You know, the Diane character is just kind of a snot.
All due respect to Shelley Long, who played it very, very well.
Yes,
but you're right.
But it's
the
sort
longevity
of
of that character.
Limited thing, so they had to do something with it to kind of flip it.
You think that sooner or later, Shelley Long made the right choice to leave?
She left too early, though.
I think she had a couple
the
of
reason
years
I
left
say,
in her, yeah.
Well, partially for the character, but she wasn't a big enough star to get those big movie deals that she wanted.
She did few.
She did, yes, but not very many.
Exactly.
The most memorable, I think, is The Money Pit with Tom Hanks, which is phenomenal.
Yes, she also did one Camp Beverly Hills, I think it was.
Troop Beverly Hills.
Troop Beverly Hills, that's it.
All right.
Which was pretty good. She had the capacity to do that, and she's a great actress. There's no doubt about that. You're right. She jumped. You know, it's a crapshoot when they do that.
Yeah.
To move from television to movies. Bruce Willis did it around that same time, but he got lucky.
Well, I think it's easier for men than it is for women.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is around the time.
Unfortunate, but true.
The whole will they, won't they was going on right around the same time on Moonlighting.
Yes.
And ultimately it killed the series. So people have said. That once.
No, what killed the series is not being able to put on a damn regular schedule.
Well, absolutely, that's correct. We should probably do a Moonlighting episode.
It was a phenomenon for
it was a
phenomenon. Oh yes, during
time.
college years, it certainly was.
Yeah. It very much was. It was one of the highest rated shows. Similar in premise a little bit. You've got the will and won't they, the two main characters that are all that. But Frasier comes out of that, and I don't want to say he takes.
It's an unusual spinoff.
It very much so.
It was really a brave, risky thing to try to spin off that character.
Right. And initially they were going to make him a whole different thing because they wanted to write something for him.
Yeah.
But eventually decided to go with
the
Frasier,
same character.
Yes.
That's right. Because by the time Cheers ended, Kelsey Grammer is very. He's at his ascendancy. People has recognized he's a hell of an actor, and he is, because he's done several things since Frasier. We'll talk about those in a little while. And has done a phenomenal job on every one of them. He is one of the best talents in Hollywood today.
Well, he's a great comedic actor.
Yeah.
Which, for a sitcom, obviously that's important.
Yeah.
And he's just a very engaging character.
And exactly. And he's been able to do serious as well, too. This TV series on Showtime, Boss, he is a son of a bitch on that. It was short-lived, unfortunately, and I know that there were a lot of regrets about that, but everything that he's done, he played George Washington, guys. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
He played him in, it was A&E movie, I think, with, I don't remember who, gosh dang it, if I hadn't tried to say his name, who played Benedict Arnold. Kelsey plays George Washington as a little bit of a younger guy, which I liked that in many respects. They didn't have much of a budget, I get that. But it was Aidan Quinn. Thank you very much. Was the guy who played Benedict Arnold? It was Arnold's story, but it was But it was and Kelsey played a very good, convincing George Washington, kind of like Jeff Daniels did in The Crossing, if you remember that A&E series as well. As a slightly young George Washington to us is always white haired and all that. And he's
that was a great series because there's a great line that Jeff Daniels has in that. The one Knox. He's the one who's fat.
Yeah, right.
He says
Henry Knox. Yes,
yes, Henry Knox. Yes, and he says to him at some point, he's like, "How a man like you can be so fat when this army is starving? I do not." Something along those lines.
Yeah.
And the entire staff, burst out laughing at it because it was very funny, and it was delivered as a funny line.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was great series.
Yeah, I remember the time when they're actually crossing the river, and this is after that's happened, and Washington gets into the boat with Henry Knox. He says, "Okay, Henry, move your fat ass out of the way." Of course, everybody, it lightens the moment because everybody's, this is a very serious moment. They're crossing Delaware with nothing to try and do that. But we're sliding aside there, slightly down the rabbit hole.
We're not rabbit holed much today.
We have a tendency to do that, and it's one of our charms.
So the setup of Frasier, again, this was a real step for a spinoff. Is they didn't even leave the character in the same city.
Right.
He leaves Boston and goes home to Seattle.
Right.
After his divorce from Lilith Sternin Crane.
Dr. Lilith Sternin.
Yes.
Which part of me is, which you have to kind of backstory. they've spent 3 or 4 years as a married couple having a child, and they have been, their story has been part of those last few seasons of Cheers.
Yeah, very important part of Cheers.
And when you
yes, the season where they first get together, where they nearly have sex on TV, is hilarious. Where they're flirting on camera and they start playing footsie, and then next thing you know, they're all over each other.
That's absolutely. So, Lilith is they divorce.
Yes.
Which you would think the obvious thing is, especially considering Bebe Neuwirth is such an amazing actress.
She is.
If she'd have done it, they could have made that story about the two of them. They could have done that.
Yeah.
But they chose to go in a different way. I want to say Frasier was divorced before the Cheers series ended. So I think
I don't know that that's true.
That. We'd have to check that. I don't know.
I don't recall if the divorce happens before they launch the Frasier show.
Correct.
His move back to Seattle is a response to the divorce.
Wait, no, you're right, because Lilith admits an affair with another man. And that's what dooms the marriage.
That's right. Yeah. He was. It was the guy she goes into the space with, the biosphere with, that she goes...
Yes.
That's right. I'd forgotten. That was in Cheers. That was towards the end of Cheers, which I'm not sure if they knew where they were going at that time. But sooner or later, you can't have them happily ever after for very long.
Well, actually, it says he hesitantly reconciles at the end of that, so maybe the divorce was off-screen.
Yeah, and it was...
Yes, it is off-screen, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it was kind of like...
The seeds were planted.
Yeah, there's issues with all that. So... But this time, Frasier he's completely, untethered from everything, which, from a sitcom perspective, makes some sense. You don't want to be tied to a previous continuity too tightly.
But it's unusual for a spin-off
to
just be completely...
This whole thing is
completely new.
That's right.
They usually try to have some anchor, but really with Frasier, it's almost...
He is the anchor.
Yeah, he is the anchor.
It's almost, self-supporting, freestanding, because there's not a ton, early on, there's not a ton of references... the life in Boston.
Lilith comes back several times. We'll talk about that.
Gives Daphne a headache every time.
It's one of my favorite episodes, especially. We'll get to that.
He moves to Seattle.
Yeah.
His father moves in with him.
Right.
His father, Martin, is a police officer, retired, who's been hurt on the job, and is very set in his ways.
Correct.
And that's your initial conflict is, here's Frasier. He's got this radio program instead of practicing.
Yes.
His brother, is practicing. They're very, what's the word?
Snobs.
Sophisticated.
Oh,
Same thing.
So well put.
They're sophisticated, and the father is not.
That's right.
And they have to hire a caretaker.
A physical therapist. Live-in physical therapist for his father.
And that is Daphne.
Daphne Moon.
Daphne Moon. We, in the 90s, my wife
from Manchester,
named our first dog after Daphne Moon.
Yes. The great Jane Leaves, who is awesome in everything she does. She did an amazing 11 years on there. She's in The Resident currently on television. So she's fantastic. And, of course, Perry Gilpin, who plays his producer, Roz.
Who was hysterical.
Absolutely.
She is a great foil to him.
Correct. So they've really set up a wonderful scenario that you can milk tons and tons of things
lot of stuff
out
with,
of, because
and not worry about the life in Boston.
That's right, and because the Frasier character is so hoity-toity, and Niles, his brother, is the competitive voice of the same thing.
Yeah.
Between the two of them, you've got that tension there, and the tension with the father in particular, and everybody else. It mines comedy gold from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still one of the most beloved shows.
And I always thought it was genius to have Niles' wife unseen.
Yes, it's just like Norm's wife.
Norm's wife, that's where they got the idea.
The famous Maris.
That's right.
That he eventually will divorce, but the Maris Crane is always off screen.
Yes, who you get the idea is a 60-pound wisp of a woman.
That's right. Yes, and Frasier so infuriated her one time on air. She decided to change her last name to put an umlaut over it and become Maris Crane. Yet another one of my favorite lines from a lot of that stuff. And we talked about this in the show prep. A lot of our favorite episodes come from the early days of the series. I do not want to say that it stuck around too long because I don't think that's the case. I think they ended it about right. But they did in that last 11th year. If you watch it, the wife and I watched it somewhat recently. They deliberately ended it. They wanted to go ahead and
they tied up some things.
Let's tie up some things and let's make sure that while there's a future out there, everybody's going and doing their own thing now.
Yeah.
Daphne and Niles are together, and of course that's been that way since season 6. And many critics mark that as the moment of the decline in quality. I don't think that's quite the case, because every season had its ups and its downs.
Yeah.
There are some episodes. There's never been one I haven't liked, but there's been some amazing characters that we work with here. Part of it was the setup, as you're alluding to. You have to set a fertile ground where these characters can thrive.
Yeah.
Comments, gentlemen.
Untethering it from Boston and bringing in the brother and making them...
David Hyde Pierce is one of the great comedic geniuses that is every bit as equal as Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah,
and the two of them together were just comedy gold.
Yeah.
They were. They played off each other so well. And of course, Niles' obsession with Daphne is part of what makes Niles' character so much fun.
And that begins from the first episode.
Yes.
I mean, he literally sees her buttocks bent over and goes, "Oh," drops his jaw. And that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the 11 years. It's like he's always looking for her. Eventually he gets her, because sooner or later, over 11 years, you cannot draw that out too long. And it actually works out pretty well, I think. They didn't lose a lot of steam, I thought, with that transition. Some people will think otherwise, but the writers of that show, and Kelsey Grammer eventually became executive producer. So he had a lot of input into how a lot of things did. And sometimes he would win something, and he would tell you this. Sometimes he would win with his ideas, and sometimes he would not. Most of the time they would. They'd kind of go with his wisdom on that. And it really evolves. They weren't afraid to evolve over time. Slightly. It wasn't quite as thou shalt hit the reset button exactly every time. Although, let's face it, pretty much, until that last year where they would deliberately push things about. They were one of the few series at the time that would do holiday episodes. If you rewatch the series, they've got a Halloween episode, they got an Easter episode, they got a Christmas episode, things like that. Because they're playing to that weekly scenario in the 90s, which was very tied, very predictable. Mm-hmm. Less so now in the age of streaming. But they were.
When everybody binges, it doesn't matter quite as much. But.
Right.
So, credit to the creators. We always like to do that here on Stateside.
Absolutely.
The Charleses, Les and...
Glenn, isn't it?
Glenn, yes.
Exactly.
Les and Glenn Charles.
That's right. They were the ones that... I don't want to give them complete control of that, but they were the force behind it. That's correct.
And certainly the force behind Cheers initially, and then...
And you guys probably...
Well, they're the ones that started up Frasier as well. It wasn't handed off to somebody.
Right, exactly. So they knew the property that they were working with. And I don't know if you guys remember when Cheers first premiered in the early 80s. It was like, what the hell is this? It was like, okay, here comes some other show about a bar. And next thing you know, it's like this huge hit. Because we're thinking, how much mileage can this get?
Yeah.
And it goes back to the... and MASH did a lot of this the decade previously. It's about those reoccurring characters that are always there. And you can put them into strange situations and let them run with it. When you've got talented folks like both MASH and Cheers and Frasier had, and let them run with some great stuff.
It's interesting in that Cheers, even throughout its entire run, almost never left the bar. It was all... I mean, there were...
But not much.
Right.
It's mostly...
Almost never. I mean, there's very few scenes... They're not at the bar. Sometimes it's in the back room of the bar.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's right outside.
Cliff on Jeopardy.
Cliff on Jeopardy was awesome.
There's the time also where they all go on the road trip and they turn on the cruise control and Sam falls asleep at the wheel and they almost crash. There's a few years.
But I mean, those are the rare exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, it is very much a bottle show, and you're right. It would seem like it was very limiting, but I think, especially early on, the kind of protective role that Sam had for Coach was very appealing to the audience.
It was, and they had to retool that.
Really liked Coach.
When he passed away. It was very, thinking about can this series survive, even though he's a supporting character. They got lucky with the talented Woody Harrelson. I give him. I didn't like him for a long time. I thought he was too close to the Woody character. but he's a brilliant actor in many ways. I've not always enjoyed everything he's done, but I've seen enough of him in recent years.
Yeah.
When he was in A War for the Planet of the Apes, kind of convinced me and said, this guy's got some really good chops. There's a reason he's constantly in these movies. He's actually, he's not this buffoon that he played. I should have never thought that, but like I said, I didn't like everything he did. People versus Larry Flint made me want to gag, but he has...
You could have put Charlton Heston in that, and that would have made you gag.
That's probably so. You're exactly right. But he did some really... He's probably been the most successful of the Cheers alums. Kelsey Grammer accepted, perhaps. Although Kelsey's been... Most of his work has been TV.
Yeah, he has had the odd movie appearances. The Beast.
Yes, that's right. Which he played very, very well.
He did. I thought he was perfect.
People
as Hank
panned
McCoy.
that movie mercilessly. The third X-Men: The Last Stand. I enjoyed it in many ways, and part of it was he played Hank McCoy, the Beast, which is perfect elan. It really was an older Beast.
Yeah, the older Beast.
Yeah, and I think it was really good because he's Kelsey. He can do all this stuff. You know, I'm a huge fan, as you guys know.
Yeah.
But favorite episodes. I'm probably going a little early on this. Should we do a bourbon break before we do favorite episodes, though? I know we're slightly...
Okay, let's do our break, and then let's talk favorite episodes.
We got to do that.
Because I would like to start off with the favorite episode.
Oh, well, absolutely. Well, then you must start off with the drink, sir.
Okay.
Because we're not drinking bourbon this time.
Right. So, listeners, this is a post-lunch feast episode, and we did feast for lunch. But for lunch, I brought over some beer. So an unusual beer break instead of bourbon break. We are still working on our, I'm not sure how to pronounce this brewery's name, Omegang Brewery in Cooperstown, New York.
Oh, MME. Yeah, that works, yeah.
And they do Belgian-style stuff. This beer is called Three Philosophers.
And when you saw the name, come on.
Yeah, so I had
That's us.
Yeah, they sell them in 4-packs. I had to let Bjorn have one and share, but I managed to hold on to the other 3. Good stuff. This has got a cherry flavor to it.
It does. It's a dark beer.
Yeah. Ale, not a lager.
Right. That's right.
And went really well with our brisket lunch and apple pie dessert.
That's right.
Yes. Very good stuff.
I was extremely pleased with this because I'm not a huge beer guy. I'd rather have bourbon, but it's fantastic. I mean, the name. Come on, Three Philosophers. That's
Three
us.
Philosophers. You gotta love it.
I almost expected our picture to be on there.
Yeah,
well, there's a picture of 3 guys on here in the moon. So let's see
which one of us
which
is
one looks like which.
All right.
Well, so they all have
none of them look very
beards.
flattering. So
It's kind of like the old song cover of the Rolling Stone. Hey, there I'm standing on the front, smiling and all that stuff. That's us, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So beer break. Favorite episodes early on. The brothers decide to buy a restaurant.
Oh, yes. The Happy Brothers. Yes.
And, of course, Martin makes fun of them. You guys know how to eat. You don't know how to run a restaurant. Oh, yes, we're familiar with all the high-end, how to do this.
That's right. Let's have it where we don't advertise.
Yes.
Because to make it very exclusive, of course, Martin says, oh, yeah, we don't want anybody to come.
You don't want anybody to come. Maybe you could put snipers on the roof to shoot at the customers. So they don't... Dad, we got this. So they open the restaurant, and at first it seems like a smashing success. The place is full.
And that's great. And the restaurant critic...
Gil
Chesterton he's coming with bringing his all the local restaurant critics because he wants their eel specialty, which is their thing.
The chef that they hire away because they know the chef at another restaurant's unhappy, so they poach him from that restaurant. His specialty is eel.
That's right.
So they're in the restaurant. It's full. Here comes the restaurant critic from the radio station, and they're taste testing the Cherries Jubilee and decide each one, without the other knowing, to add more brandy.
That's
to the Cherries
part of
Jubilee.
It. What sets everything off-site is they forget that in the kitchen, one door is enter, one door is exit. One goes, I think it's either Frasier or Niles, goes in the wrong door, smashes and breaks the nose of one of the waiters. So
that's one thing. The other thing is they're giving the chef contradictory directions on the souffle. I think it was Frasier wants it all in one big thing and cutting the portions.
That's right. And
And
Niles
wants
says
it all in individual.
Remingtons.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they don't know that they're giving the chef contradictory instructions, and he quits.
That's right.
So the chef quits, and they go to promote someone else from the kitchen, but then they mention that the head of immigration is also in the restaurant. So all the rest of the kitchen staff zooms out the back door.
Yeah.
So now Niles and Roz or Niles and Daphne are the kitchen staff.
That's right.
And Roz has to become the head waiter. And Martin's tending bar.
Yes.
And probably laughing the entire time.
And of course,
Yes.
Frasier tries to convince that the Gil and his folks that, well, our chef has a new specialty, scrambled eggs, which he tries to put forth. And they said, no, we really want the fresh eels. So he goes back into the back and says, Niles, quickly, kill 4 eels. Which he doesn't know how to do that. So he says, what do you want me to do? Throw them into, throw an electrical...
Yes, because the original chef wanted them fresh.
Right.
So they're live eels in the kitchen in a tank.
In a tank. So Niles says, what are we going to do? Throw in the electric mixer into there. And Frasier says, no, of course not. Get them out and kill fresh eels. The next thing you know is Frasier goes back out.
Daphne grabs him and says, as she swings them like a rope and smashes them against the counter.
That's right.
And starts killing eels, just swinging them out of this tank. Whap! Because, of course, she's much more working class than the brothers are.
Well, eventually Niles throws something electric into the tank because all of a sudden the lights flicker when he's out there while he's talking to Gil. At this point... That's when Roz finally decides to light the Cherries Jubilee that both Frasier and Niles have been pouring more brandy into, and it explodes.
Yes, and poor Roz is covered in cherries.
And she comes in, I swear I could imagine the makeup that poor Perry Gilpin had to go through, because she's got her hair teased way out, to black eyes and everywhere. She goes, cherries, alcohol, explosion. That's all she can say. And, of course, that's when the sprinklers go off.
The sprinklers come on, yes.
And they all leave. And, of course, it's a typical Frasier episode, folks. One of mine.
It was, it's in that great, absurd tradition of...
It's the modern I Love Lucy.
Yeah, I Love Lucy.
Absolutely. This is a situational comedy.
Yes.
That all you do is take these few things, and I don't know who wrote that episode. I wish I did. That has got to be one of the greatest... You're right. It's one of the very best of many, because we've got others that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, and physical comedy is not originally the strong suit of the show. Again, it's about these wordy, sophisticated characters, the relationship with the father and all that, but it's just so absurd, it's hysterical.
Because most episodes would begin with Frasier on air, and they'd have a guest, it's usually a celebrity, which you don't know till the end who that celebrity is. They would be a guest caller. They'd do the audio. Yeah. And it would be, who knows what. I mean, sometimes it would actually matter. As the series went on, they did less of that, and it would actually be integrated more, but this was kind of like a teaser, especially in the early years, to get folks to tune in and stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, big-time celebrities would be the quote caller.
Right, because especially in the first 2 or 3 or 4 years, where the series has not become the phenomenon that eventually would become, you want to make sure you hook that audience in those first... I mean, the credits were like 3 seconds. That's all they were. And you go right to the action, because they know in this day long before streaming, if you don't hook them in the first 30 seconds, they're switching channels. So that's kind of the reason why the format is the way that it is, because it's a 22-minute episode.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're two-parters, sometimes they're not. It depends on how, as they went on, and once you got to the point where they dominated their time slot every year.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't take long for that.
And lots of awards.
Lots of awards. Lots of awards. I forget how many Emmys.
He won several Emmys.
4 Emmys, 2 Golden Globes, and a number of nominations.
Exactly.
And did Perry Gilpin eventually?
I don't know. I didn't see the.
I want to say David Howard Pierce got some too.
I believe he got.
I'm pretty sure.
I have to imagine the entire cast was at least nominated at one point.
Very much so, because they were all so.
Yeah, Jane Leeves and Perry Gilpin were often nominated, and of course competing against each other.
Yeah, in many respects, David Hyde Pierce might be the comedic master. I do not want to diminish Kelsey Grammer's role by any means. He was more than just that, but David was very good at. You might remember the episode. It was a silent section of an episode where he's he's trying to iron a pair of pants, and he sets fire to them as he's moving around, and it's like a 3-minute piece where it's just him doing this little bit, and he eventually passes out because he finally puts the fire out. That was a little bit later in the series, and it's kind of like, let the man work.
Yeah. Let him have
such a genius. I'll reference another moment when he gets a hot foamy shave cream machine that he puts in the side bathroom, and Martin is working on the disposal, and the thing explodes and comes off on him, and he thinks his hand's in there, and he runs out. And sorry, I wish I had better prepared for that. Damn it, you had to be there.
But Robert had another great episode, is also a favorite of mine, that you mentioned about they take an RV trip.
Oh, yes, the RV trip, yes.
Frasier wanting to get closer to Martin. Again, this early on, there's still this dynamic of Martin telling his kids, you all are snooty, but your mother was a sophisticated one, but she never looked down on others.
Right.
She was a sophisticated one, that's where you all get it. But you have to. She never
played by Rita Wilson occasionally in flashback, marvelously so.
Yeah.
By the way,
and so he always, had that very difficult relationship with the boys. So Frasier wanted to do something, and they take the road trip in the RV
with the words "the hooping cranes" on the back of the thing.
And take Daphne along with them.
Right, because she's got to go.
That's right.
She's got to go. Yes.
And they don't realize it, but they've drifted into Canada.
Well, they realize it, but she's napping in the back.
Yeah, they don't tell Daphne she's asleep.
And they don't realize that the condition of her green card is she doesn't leave the country.
Yeah. She can't. Her immigration status is.
And when she wakes up in Canada, she has an absolute batshit fit. Right? Oh my God, to do that.
And of course, part of the fun of this character is this great, heavy Manchester accent.
Yes.
And all these British idioms that she says. So the moment she opens her mouth, she's not going to sound American. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be impossible to hide her when they go back across the border.
Right, because apparently you can leave the country willy-nilly, but you can't get back in.
You can't get back in. So they get stopped, of course, by the Border Patrol. And the only thing Daphne can manage to say and sound like an American is...
Sure.
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 Yeah, that's right. And they're doing all this, and of course, the more they try to play it off, the worse it gets.
The worse it's getting.
And finally, and this is kind of like the capstone of Martin, is he's the guy. He's the one that he's the perfect one.
Showing his police badge, and
he says, "Okay, I got to tell you," because the immigration officer's getting very suspicious. He says, "Okay, I got to tell you, guy, I'm a former cop. We've been lying to you the whole time." And that's when their dog comes forth.
The famous Eddie.
The famous Eddie comes forth, jumps in his lap, and says, and Martin says, he doesn't have his shots. Which, of course, diffuses everything. Right. And the guy says, okay, fine, go ahead. Next time take that care of.
Yeah, make sure you got your proof.
And they go back in, and Daphne is saved. That's the situational comedy is what makes this.
Yeah.
Makes this. I'll have to tell you my favorite episode. I believe it's second season. Seat of Power is the name of it. This is when the toilet breaks. Oh, come on, guys. You have to remember this.
No,
the Kreisel brothers. You don't remember the Kreisel brothers?
They're the plumbers.
That's
Frasier
right.
has to call, and they picked on the boys the whole time.
That's right. The two Kreisel brothers are the ones
because in the entire city of Seattle, the only plumbers they can find are childhood bullies.
That's right. Billy and Danny Kreisel. Danny was the younger brother who bullied Niles, and Billy was the older brother who bullied Frasier. The toilet breaks. They try to fix it. They can't. So they call the plumber, and it's Danny Kreisel who shows up. And Niles recognizes him right away, and he almost has a fit when he goes in there. They ends up psychoanalyzing Danny on the couch out there, and coming to some sort of an understanding. And he brings back all those bullying things. He gets Danny almost in tears. Well, Danny can't fix it. He has to call his brother Billy, who comes in, is in the toilet in the bathroom with Frasier, talking about how he remembers this mook when he was in grade school, that they would put his head into the toilet and flush it, call it a swirly. And there goes Crane down the drain.
Yeah.
And at this point, Frasier has been telling Niles, you need to make peace with this guy. You're better than that. You're bigger than that. Of course, Niles discovers that Danny Kriesel has a larger Mercedes than he has, and almost breaks down several times. But he eventually works it out. Whereas while Billy is in the toilet, head face down inside of it, and Frasier says, "Oh, let me show you something." So, and of course, you don't see this happen, but you hear all this, and Frasier pushes his head into the toilet, and he runs out of the place just as Niles is making this wonderful breakthrough, and he says, "Run, Niles! The beast is loose!" And Billy Kriesel is wet and all this, chasing after him as they leave. And of course, the episode ends. He says, "How quickly did you write that check?" He said, "Oh, quicker than you can possibly imagine."
Yeah.
That's my favorite episode.
The other great one, and I can't remember. Usually, there's more than one plot, of course, like most shows. There's multiple plots going on, but the episode where Niles is trying to figure out if he would make a good father.
Oh my gosh, with the sack of flour.
So he's not even consulting Maris really or anything, but he's carrying around a bag of flour. He leaves it too close to the fireplace at home, so he has to he brings it into Frasier's apartment. It's got all these burn marks.
That's right,
and duct tape and all this on it. So he says, "All right, I'm putting the baby down for a nap," and he puts it down on Frasier's couch. And he gets involved with Daphne and everything. Of course, his attention is taken by Daphne. Eddie discovers the bag of flour, rips it open, and starts throwing flour everywhere.
Yes.
And Daphne, it's one of the greatest lines ever. Daphne goes, "That dingo's got your baby."
That's right. Yes, that's
and this great Manchester, Jane Leaves with this great accent.
Yes.
"That dingo's got your baby."
That's right.
You see, I watched all the episodes. I don't remember them like you guys. I don't know that I have a particular favorite episode because I don't know that I could. I remember all the bits, but that we're talking about. But
the first couple of seasons were recently on Paramount Plus.
They're still there.
One of the streaming. So I had to go not too long ago, a few months ago, and dig through and find at least that one. And the Brothers, the Happy Brothers episode, because they're just too good.
So for me, I just remember the bits, a lot of the bits. The thing where Lilith comes to visit, and as soon as the plane touches down in Seattle, Daphne gets this huge migraine, and it doesn't lift until the plane takes off.
Oh, yeah.
She always claims she was psychic, too.
Right, because she's mildly psychic.
Yes, and she senses this great evil that has approached.
Yes.
Which that's the
malevolent presence.
That's the episode where they actually Lilith and
they almost reconcile.
Well, they do. They end up in bed together.
Yeah, but they don't have sex.
No, one of them they absolutely did. This is the first one. They actually end up, and Frasier wakes up like, "Oh my God, what have I done?" And they come close, and the eggs come in, and they're not the same. She goes, "Oh, we can't do this." He goes, "Oh, you're right." He talks about how this is never going to work. She goes, "I was talking about how the eggs were not done right." So they end up deciding this is not going to work, and they stay that way.
There's an episode early on where they end up taking a vacation in the same place, right?
That happens
with other people. They travel to the islands. Frasier's with a date.
Jo Beth Williams was the actress that was with him.
Dating.
He was dating. Of course, Frasier's love life. My God, we could do a whole episode on Frasier's love life. It's constantly changing, and some were better. Mercedes Rule was one of them. She was dirty girl.
She was the boss at the
radio station, and they ended up doing the nasty on the air, not knowing that he's bad boy and she's dirty girl, and things go. That's the time.
That's a lose your license kind of thing.
Well, that's when Maris decides to change her name to Maris Crane. because it was he's done this sort of thing. And
Lilith is in the islands in the hotel room or
next
next door on the beach.
Yeah,
with her date.
That's right. That's one of the, because Lilith is back several times. The best one though is when Niles has narcolepsy and ends up in bed with Lilith. They do the nasty. And you don't know this because there's a little time jump there. And Lilith wakes up, comes out of the the cover, she goes, "Morning, dear," and you don't know who's next to her. And Niles pulls down, he says, "It's morning, dear." And of course, Frasier comes in to try to reconcile, and Niles has to hide in the bathroom. And Frasier is trying to get the nasty done with her. She goes into the bathroom to try and keep Niles quiet because he's falling asleep from the narcolepsy that he's got. And comes back out, and Frasier's taking off all his clothes. And he's in a bathroom, and she comes out of the bathroom and goes, "My God!" And he goes, "My goddess." One of my favorite lines that he does. And of course, she figures it out, and the best line that they salvaged, because that could have been a deal breaker for the whole rest of the series.
Yeah.
To do that, sleep with the ex-wife. And Niles asks him at the end of this, says, "Are we good?" He goes, "No, we're not, but we will be." And it kind of takes it back to where it goes, and yes, but we will be. So it again, they really do a great job with these characters.
Yeah, because the relationship of the brothers is very up and down. Sometimes they're very close.
Well, it's very central to the show.
Yeah, they're so close, they're also competitive.
Yes. Oh, the time they tried to write the novel together and they locked themselves in the hotel room?
They were writing a psychology book together.
That's right.
They were writing a novel. They did. They locked themselves in a hotel room and didn't write a word.
Because they ended up with Frasier choking Niles on the bed, and Niles says, "I'm flashing back to my crib," and Frasier's saying, "You stole my mummy!" They go all the way back to infancy at that time.
Yeah. So, good stuff. Good stuff.
Yes, truly, Frasier is one of the great. I cannot remember the number of Emmys, but Robert laid that out earlier. It's truly one of the greatest TV series ever put forth. If you have, I can't imagine anybody has not watched it at least partially.
My kids have never seen an episode, I guarantee.
Really, because it's on. Currently, it's bounced from Netflix to a couple places, but it's on Prime right now.
How would they have ever seen it? It was broadcast live when they were at best babies.
Well, but it's got such life to it.
It is one though that isn't.
It's not on reruns a lot.
Yeah, it's not a syndicated.
It was for a long time.
Yeah,
it has not been lately in the streaming era.
Yeah,
but Lifetime
replaced.
ran it. Several others would run it in cable eras. It was a staple for many years, syndicated with local TV. See, of course, all of these things we're talking about now are irrelevant in the age of streaming.
Yeah.
So you have to search it out now to find it. Whereas for years, and this was early 2000s, for 10 years, it was everywhere. Because it was recent and it was good, and every local television affiliate would run it, and so many of the cable channels would run it.
Yeah, on the cable channels, the TBS, TNT has kind of been replaced by
Big Bang Theory has kind of taken over that, but it was the king of those for a long time. Because it was still close in time to be relevant, and it's one of those shows that if you haven't watched it, it's binge worthy like you wouldn't believe.
Oh yeah, especially if you can shoot through the first couple of seasons.
Yeah,
it's hysterical stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
The one where Frasier's going to get in a fight with a guy.
Oh, one of the callers.
One of the callers, yes, and Martin has to kind of arrange for the police to come and break it up before Frasier can get his brains beat in. But at least he faced, it gives Frasier this big boost that he thought he had faced down the danger.
It was mostly a bottle show, as you say. There were just several. Frasier's apartment and the radio station were mostly the main sets. Yes. They would have occasional ones where you would have. They even did a few. They actually went to Seattle. Not many, but they actually did a couple. And it might have been the one where he was going to be in the fight. I don't remember.
Yeah.
They would do some of that, and they'd have the offset here.
The coffee shop feeder.
The coffee shop was always
that was a
big deal because they all went in the coffee shop.
Niles' apartment at the Montana when he. There for a while when he was in the process. He was divorced, and he had his own little place. Where they had some really, really great moments of that. I'm surprised you didn't mention the story of O. When they do the costume party one evening, this is when Daphne announced. When Roz announces that she's pregnant, about third or fourth season, I think, or maybe fifth, and they do a costume party, and Niles is Cyrano de Bergerac. Frasier is from the innkeeper from the Canterbury Tales, and of course. Roz is dressed in basically this bustier and whips and chains. And they ask, "Who are you?" She goes, "I'm O from the story of O." And they go, "Oh." Yeah. We kind of had to be there, I suppose, for some of this stuff here. Final thoughts before we wrap this thing up. One thing I will let you all know that as of last year, Kelsey Grammer was talking about bringing this series back as a reboot. We're not real sure.
Yeah, it was announced for Paramount Plus.
That's right.
CBS. It wasn't Kelsey Grammer. CBS made the announcement.
Yeah, he was supposedly producing it. That was kind of the agreement.
Yeah.
During the
I'm sure by the end of the show, he was the executive producer.
Yeah, he was. That's correct. So the intention was, he's got his own production company. The intention was that they would produce this for Paramount Plus. So I haven't heard anything on it for over a year now. Some of this may be COVID related, some of it may not.
It's probably COVID related. There's a backlog of stuff to get done.
That's correct. We're hopeful. Some of the early ideas that were being floated for this possibility would be, because it's going to be years later, because Kelsey Grammer's older, so the character would be aged, that Frederick, their son, his and Lilith's son, who was a child during that series, is now an adult. And Frasier is living with him.
Yes.
Because his father lived with them, and now it's kind of a reversal of that. That's one of the things they've talked about on that. Getting all the old cast together, I don't know if that's even possible. Of course, the actor who played Martin has passed on.
Yes.
And
I've forgotten his name, but he was in
John
Mahoney.
John Mahoney.
Yeah,
That's correct.
In the Line of Fire and Say Anything.
Yeah.
A couple of his great movie roles.
And he actually had quite a career on that. He was an amazing comedic actor that brought a really great, I don't want to say gravitas.
Well, the real star of the show was Eddie.
The dog was great.
Who was the same
famous.
dog throughout the time. His real name was Moose. The actual dog's name, and he
kind of started
away.
A run on that breed.
He did.
That was kind of the emergence of that. What do they call it? Parson Russell Terrier.
That's right. The little dog, the actual acting dog, passed away just a few years after the series ended, because that's 11 years of this doggy's life.
Yeah.
That's he was. And it's an amazing thing because the dog action was pretty often. Eddie is in every episode in many respects, and it's kind of amazing to give a little shout out to old Moose. May he rest in doggy heaven, as they say. But Jane Leeves has quite the career now on The Resident. And she's one of the...
Well, she did that Cleveland show with...
Hot in Cleveland.
Hot in Cleveland,
yes.
yes.
White and all that. So, she's had quite the career. The other folks...
She's done some voiceover stuff too, right?
Yes, she has.
Perry Gilpin has done a ton of voiceover stuff. She did some stuff with Superman in the animated series and a few other stuff.
Oh, yes. She's done DC Universe stuff.
She has, very much so. She's done pretty much all of the actors have had quite the career. I know that Bebe Neuwirth was once titled as royalty of Broadway.
Oh, yes.
She's done a huge Broadway Broadway career. So all these actors and actresses have done some really good job. Will they come back? Can they come back? Should they come back? I don't know.
I think Niles and Daphne, it just wouldn't be the same without the two of them.
It's his brother. You can't really cast him aside, I don't think. And with Niles comes Daphne. You're exactly right. So could it be done?
I can't remember. Did they end up together?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yes.
Season 6, they ended up together.
I mean, at the end of the show.
Yeah, they stayed together for those last... They ended up running away together at Daphne's wedding to Donnie, played by the great Saul Rubinek, Kivas Faggio on The Next Generation.
Yes.
And they ended up getting married a little bit later after that. And they stayed together. They actually wrote Daphne out for a while and sent her to the fat farm. You remember this? Because Jane Leeves was pregnant. So they decided, well, we're not going to do that. We're just going to make... Basically, Daphne decides to have an eating disorder. Probably not politically correct by any means. But
especially to deal with it as they did.
As they did. But that's basically what happened, is they sent her away while she's pregnant, and she comes back after the fact.
They ended up... Chuck Lorre did the same thing on Mom with...
Allison Janney?
No, not Allison Janney. The blonde. What is her name? That was in My Name is Earl. She was having a child.
Presley.
Jamie Presley.
Jamie Presley.
Same thing. They made her where she had was overeaters, and she went to a camp, and that's the way they dealt with hiding
The
pregnancy as that actress. So
Yes.
that's the thing that's yeah. They're not unique.
It's exactly.
It's been done.
You got to figure out something. I mean, Next Generation did it with Gates McFadden was pregnant. They just hit her a lot and waited until she was.
They hit a pregnant woman.
That's right. Yeah, they hid that tummy for a while, and
Just thought they smacked her around.
Put Doctor behind the desk a lot.
That's correct for that season, and the next season, she's back, and everything was fine. So, just kind of the way it works. I think it was the 4th season. So, final thoughts before we end this, guys.
I'm done, man.
Anything else, Robertius?
It's an awesome show.
I got to say that dingo's got your baby. So
I was
I'm
wondering
done.
how we were going to end this, other than "Hello, Seattle, we're listening," or better yet, and I'll end it here in a second. But first, let's talk about what's next.
What's next, man?
Hoopajoop, guys.
Hoopajoop.
We haven't done a Hoopajoop in a while. It's time.
We only do 4 a year.
We only do 4 a year. It's time. We're going to talk about Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. We're going to talk about our favorite.
Now he's Dracula.
That's
No,
right.
no, that was Chekhov.
That was Chekhov. Come on.
Really? Because that didn't. That's well.
I knew
The Russian
immediately.
Dracula. You can.
Okay,
I
fine.
knew
What-
immediately that was his Walter Koenig.
That
as
was my
Chekhov.
Walter Koenig impersonation.
Yes,
That's
from
right.
Star Trek 6. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes,
Anyway,
yes.
we're going to talk about, and I believe Martin's going to captain this. If we could invite anybody to dinner, who would that be, and what would it be like? Living. We're going to make a proviso. It's got to be a living individual. So we're going to talk about that next episode. And as we leave, we'll just simply say, Frasier has left the building.
Toss salads and scrambled eggs. Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes published every Friday at noon Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a comment or review because that helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next week, same snake time, same otter channel.